remember as a kid, I think I was 4 or 5 at the time. We had a family staying with us. I think they were homeless, or not necessarily homeless, but in transition. And I remember coming like, who's the people in the living room? And she was like, oh, they're having a hard time. They needed to like transition. I don't remember how long it was. It was short, but it was like, it was a woman, her husband, and then they had a small child. And she's like, they didn't have anything. So we can, so we did. And I'm like, just seeing that, it was like, that's what it was. I think it was, she did so that I am, because she was.
When you say that, it holds so much power, and that's where I want to go, back to those days when she was doing it so that you can. But seeing your name on Instagram, I am Beatrice Henry.
Beatrice Henry.
Beatrice Henry. I am Beatrice Henry. Thank you for correcting me. That seems like more than just I'm trying to grab this name and just add lettering to it. No, it feels powerful. It feels like you're claiming who you are. And I just want to know who you are at the core. If going back to building up, and you're putting it with that quote too.
Okay. So many things actually come from that, because that's not how I started off on Instagram.
Okay.
When I started off, I was one busy bee. Jonathan actually encouraged me to do Instagram. I wasn't on it. I'm like, well, I'm on Facebook. I'm not super into social media, or wasn't at the time. And I was like, I don't even have a name for social media. He's like, get on there. He's like, oh, you can be one busy bee. Because that was what I went by, like on my Pinterest, I think, or something else. I was like, I'm busy bee. He was like, well, just be one busy bee. And so it started off there for a few years. And I want to say probably 2018, 19 is when I switched. I was in a space that just felt very heavy to me for some reason. And we had quite a few transitions. I grew up in a church, and we moved to a different church right before Onyx turned 1. So I just felt very heavy, and there was a lot of stuff going on at that moment. And I remember being like, okay, Lord, this doesn't feel good anymore. I feel like I have a lot on me, a lot on my shoulders. And he was like, because you're doing too much. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He was like, you can do everything, which is awesome. Because I really can do a lot of stuff. I create, I sew, I draw, a lot of stuff. And I remember praying when I was younger, like, I don't want a job. I don't want a job. I want to be able to, have you heard the jack of all trades?
Yes,
like,
ma'am.
I'm a Jill of all trades. I can do a lot of stuff, and I don't want to be pigeonholed into one thing. Like, I want to be able to use all of the stuff that I do to create this thing that is me. And so I'm like, I dibbled and dabbled in a lot of stuff. And the Lord was like, yes, but where you are now, you've picked up so much stuff. Like, you've rode, what it felt like is, like they go on the float trips. You get on a little floaty and you just go down the
I was definitely about to ask what it is.
I've never been. I've seen them. They have those little, like, big little donut things that you get into the boat.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And you float down. And it's like, that's where you've been for so much of your life at this point. You've been in there, and you're just going with the flow, which is, I have to touch back on that, because
that's hard.
My word for the year is flow, so I have to touch back on that. But it's like, you've gone with the flow, and that's okay to do that for a while. But, like, when do you stop and say, this is the direction I want to go in and that I need to be in, versus you're going this way and somebody's like, hey, well, let's do this. And I'm like, okay, sure. So you float this way and you float this way. And God was like, yes, you can. But what I want to know now is, what can you not do? And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? He's like, what can you not do? You have your hands on so many things, but you're tired, you're exhausted, because you're out here running yourself ragged, doing stuff that you don't necessarily need to do. And it's like, if you're doing all of the things, then where does somebody else get to come in and step in and do some of the things that they're supposed to be doing? Because you've got your hands on it, you can't do it. And I was like, oh, okay, Lord. And I ended up in a Bible study group at church with some women and the pastor's wife. And that was one of the things that came up. It was like, what can you not do? And I remember saying that in the Bible study. And everybody was like, whoa. And I'm like, that's where I am now because I have my hands on so many things. I'm tired. I'm exhausted, not sleeping well, like agitated. Because, like, well, I'm doing this. And it's like, but you're not supposed to. Yes, you are. But is that something that I ask you to do? So it's like, okay, you busy. Busy doesn't mean productive. Busy doesn't mean that you're supposed to be there.
That's hard.
Busy doesn't mean that that is your assignment. You're just busy. Like running around doing stuff that is not necessarily you. So take your hands off of it and stop doing so much stuff. And it's like, well, I don't want to be busy anymore. Like, I'm tired of being busy. And it's like, well, what are you? It's like, I am. You what? I am Beatrice Henry. And so I remember I think I even made a post about it. I have to find that. But it was like the transition from being busy and being everywhere to being intentional. And so I'm like, okay, I don't want to be everywhere, have my hands on everything. I want to be intentional and be specifically on the stuff that God's called me for. So that's
you said a lot. That was so fire. And like when you say running around, doing all the things that you shouldn't be doing, I can so connect to that as far and then finally getting into a lane where I feel like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think the way I realize that is by the effect I'm having on people.
Absolutely.
And, I feel like God puts us here for togetherness and to love other people. And I feel like that's what I'm doing by doing this, loving on other people. Yeah. When you talk to God, though, are you hearing an audible voice? Because some people say they can hear the actual voice in some people. How do you know that's him telling you that?
It comes in different ways. And something that I've always prayed for is like, God, give me the neon flashing sign. And I'm like, I need it. It's so much stuff that can come and tell you like, this is it, or you should be going this way. And like I said, you go with the flow. So you pick up something. And since you're going that way, it feels like, well, maybe God's telling me to do this. And I'm like, I don't want to miss the thing that you have for me. Give me that neon flashing light sign that says with the arrows pointing to it, like, this is what you're supposed to do. And it's even in that season of like not doing everything. God is like, but listen, you got the neon flashing line, the sign, but what about the whispers that I've been trying to give you? And I was like, well, Lord, I need to know for sure that it's you. And he's like, but if you need a neon flashing sign to do that, that means you got too much going on because the sign is taking you away from all the stuff that's going on. You need the flashing light because there's so much other stuff that's out there taking my attention.
Okay.
And so I started praying in that season too, what can I not do? And Lord, let me catch the whispers. It's like the whispers are the most powerful thing for some people. It's like, these are the things that if you are really, really listening for, you can hear them. You have children? When you hear your kids call your voice, you know it's your kids. You can be at the park with 20 other kids, but your kid says, Daddy.
Yes, ma'am.
Or Mommy. I'm like, wait a minute. I know that's my kid. There was a situation, my kids were doing something, playing with a cousin, and it was the way she said my name that I could tell she was in distress. Like, she had been saying, Mommy, come here, Mommy. And I'm like, you don't want nothing y'all playing. But it was like, Mommy. And I'm like, drop everything, hop out of bed, because that is a distress call. And it's like, that's how God wants us to be able to hear. Yeah, the flashing signs are great, because that way you know for sure it's you. But if I'm telling you and giving you a whisper, like, you should be able to catch those too. So it's like, Lord, let me take some stuff out, remove some things, make room, and like really dig in and listen to the whispers. There's also times that I did a lot of 3 o'clock in the morning waking up. The Lord was like, your day is so busy. This is the time that I can catch you. I will be up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I have a phone full of notes that I keep saying that I need to do something with. Some of them I have. I used to do a motivational Monday.
Hey everybody, welcome to another Motivational Monday. We are officially in a new month, which means a new theme. The theme for February is, I thought you loved me.
On our YouTube channel. And some of those came from those 3 o'clock. The Lord was like, here, let me give you something that I tried to give you earlier, but it was so much going on, I couldn't give it to you. So there's a 3 o'clock in the morning, he's waking me up, and I'm like, okay, Lord, what is it? Give it to me, please, because it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I want to go back to sleep. So I would get my phone out, type it out, word for word, whatever he gave me. And once I got that and he gave it to me, I could get back to sleep. And there was some that there was a neon flashing signs, that there was like, there's no question that this is God. And he was like, but there's the whisper too. Like there's levels. The middle of it, he's like, I'm gonna catch you because nothing's going on. The high point are the neon flashing lights. And then the low point, or actually could be the opposite. The high point are the whispers. Those are the things that you need to listen to, but you got to separate and get away from some stuff together.
I know you said that's the high point, but do you feel like the purpose is higher in the whispers?
That's what I'm saying, because I was gonna say the low point, but honestly could be either or. It just depends. Yeah. It could be just as heavy, but it's like, listen, make sure you are able to catch it on whatever level he's giving it to you.
Is it very challenging though? These whispers, are they challenging? Are those things that challenge you, the whispers? Like, when we'll argue with God. If you feel like I think he likes to put us in uncomfortable situations to grow us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those are the more challenging things for us. So are those the times where you're like, come on, dog, I can't do that?
Oh, I've had those. In one year, this was probably around that same time. This is, I think, year 5. I started doing resolutions. And I'm like, by February or March, of course, you forget about the resolution or you start off somewhere and it doesn't get to what you think it's supposed to be. It's like, oh, well, I'll just pick it up next year. And I read a book, One Word That Will Change Your Life. It was about listening to God and him giving you one word for the entire year. Like not a resolution, not a bunch of things, but like one word that you focus on. And this is the thing that you focus on for the year. And I believe that was 2017 or 2018 when I got that. It was like, okay, focus on one thing. And one of the ones that was the hardest for me was obey.
Was that your word that year? Obey.
I was like, what when you say obey? Like, what do you mean?
Right.
Obey. And it was like, listen, if I tell you to do something, do it. You don't have to understand it. You don't get to see the end result. You don't get to see every single step as it's going. But if I'm telling you to do something, know that it's important enough to do it. And that was the hardest year for the word that I've had, because it would be like little stuff like, go tell that woman hello. I'm like, I don't. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like that, it didn't make sense to me. But when I didn't do it, I noticed that, like, dang, that was an opportunity. And God was like, that was a little thing that I showed you. So next time, catch it. And I would hopscotch in and out of, like, the Lord told me to do something. Or I would think like it was just something little and I didn't listen to it. And I'll see the result from not doing it. I was like, oh, that was you. That was one of those little things to see how well you can do it.
Yeah.
And it hit me hard because it's like, this is how your kids do you. When I tell my kids to do something, they don't do it right away. The Lord hit me so hard through my kids that year. And it's like, why don't y'all just, like, when I'm telling you something, why don't you just do it? And it's like, you do me like that?
Uh-huh.
It's like, okay. It's like, you guys don't understand. Yeah. Like, I'm your mother. Like, you think, like, I know, I've been here, I've seen it. And it's like, that's how you do me. You don't get it, but I know. Everything from beginning to end, I know this. Mm-hmm. And I just need you to fill in. I'm like, okay. So I had a very hard hit as a parent that year. Mm-hmm. And just being able to believe and just trust. It's like, a big part of this for me was knowing that if you are going to listen to me, that you believe I have your best interest at heart no matter what. And I would tell my kids that. I was like, don't y'all, like, do you think I would tell you to do something that's going to get you hurt? Do you think that I would say something to you that doesn't have your best interest in mind? And it'll be like, I was like, they're like, you do me like that. And I'm like, yes, I do. And I'm like, I had to give my kids and myself a lot of grace and like work on it. God's telling you to do something. He knows you don't, but that's your father. So do it. So I'm like, I'm your mother. If I tell you to do something, do it. Sometimes you get an explanation, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
And that's just how it turned into. It's like, and it helped me to see myself differently and to see my kids differently and to see God differently. I'm still working on it. I will be honest, I'm still working on it.
I would imagine.
But it's helped me to, what I say to myself is, if it comes up, listen to it. Pay attention. If it comes up more than once, act on it, because it's coming up for a reason.
Yeah.
So.
You want to be, because we talked about editing earlier.
Yeah.
you have to be in control of your edits. That means you had a plan,
Yeah.
but it's not always what you plan.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So sometimes that's God speaking through you. I mean, speaking to you, like, especially when stuff ain't going right your way. And it may even appear that it's going right your way in that moment, but on down, he start to show you, nah, that ain't what I told you to do.
Oh, I've been there. He's like, now when you get done doing that, then you come back over here and do what I told you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, walk of shame, like get back over here to where God told me to be. But in those moments, it helped me, like I said, give my kids grace. It's like, you're gonna make mistakes. God doesn't give you one chance and you didn't do it, so you figured it out and you on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand that, like, you keep going. I made a mistake, but I'm gonna do better next time. And not to keep doing the same thing over and over again.
I think though we are over a human being as far as our kids,
Mm-hmm.
once we realize we're still children, we start to become better parents.
Absolutely.
Because we can, like you said, like we talked about earlier, make edits to the way you do stuff. Sometimes we're so caught up on how we want things done that we won't even be listening to our kids or listening to what God's trying to say through them. But you seem to be catching that, because when you say something your way and then he's like,
Absolutely.
you know what I'm saying? But it takes somebody who wants God to be in control to even pay attention to that tap, because a lot of us won't.
Yep.
I am is so hard to me, because once it finally kicked to me why God is I am, I was like, that. Why do I even call him God no more? I'm gonna just call you I am. And you putting I am ahead of what you do and saying you do all of these things, it's like, that's powerful. But going back to your mom and how because you didn't just, you were born with talents, but you had to get something from somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
Going back to your mom and your childhood, though, and then we'll be back. Going back to your mom and your childhood, what did your household look like? What did growing up look like?
It was a platter of just amazing stuff. Like the buffet as a kid, you go to the buffet, you get everything you want, whatever you want, how much of what you want. And I truly am blessed to have had the best of, not everything, but the best of the right stuff. Both of my parents were in my life.
Oh.
It was a lot of different things happening, but I feel like my parents always made sure that we were taken care of no matter what. My parents are married for probably like 6 or 7 years. They divorced when I was probably about 3 or 4, somewhere in that realm. Mm-hmm. But my father was always present. He was the type that, listen, I'll sit outside the front door to make sure that mine is taken care of time. He didn't play about his kids. Like he didn't play. Like, hands down, there was no question. If he thought a fly was doing something, he would kill a fly over his kid. Like, it was nothing about that. And I loved that, because I felt protected. I felt covered. I felt loved. There was nothing that a person could say about me to me that my daddy hadn't told me that I would believe it. It's like, oh, you said what? Let me go check my daddy book. It's like, nope, my daddy did not say that. So no, thank you. And that's how it was. I always say my dad was my confidence builder. My mother was my relationship with God. And they had very different aspects of parenting because of how they grew up. My dad was one of 15. My mother was one of 2. So they took care of each other. The brother, the little sister, the cousin, auntie, all of them, they were the caretakers of everyone. Uh-huh. My sister and I are 3 years apart. So growing up, my mother was like, oh, she's just 3. She's just her, a little bit younger than her. It's like, let her do it. She's her older sister. She can help her. She's only 3 years older than her. She's 3, she's 4, whatever. She can do it. So just having those aspects of the different versus, the different way you grow up versus everybody's taking in and pitching in, versus my mother, where there was just 2 of them. And her brother was like a year or 2 older than her. So there's not much of an age gap. They're little. So it's like, you can do it. You got a bigger sister, your bigger sister can help you. You can figure it out. Y'all can take care of it together. Mm-hmm. My father's like, there were 6 sisters. There was a pit bull for every sister. You watched out for each other. You took care of each other. There was no mine.
Mm-hmm.
There was ours, and this is how it was. Even growing up, cousins, aunties, auntie mamas, all of that. And that's just how it was. It was a big family.
That's dope.
My mother's side of the family, there were so many of them. There was just love, community everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just like there was no, we don't do this on our own. It was everybody's doing it. And it just felt good. I tell my kids this too, like when you go to a place and you know you can let your kids go without having to keep an eye on them 24/7. That's a comforting feeling, knowing that in this place, no matter where my kids are, they're covered.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you a sense of ease and peace to know that you watching my kids, I'm watching your kids. If something happens, that's how it is. My grandmother is in the house that she's been in for over 60 years.
Jeez.
Neighborhood kids still come to her house. As they're older, like, oh, Miss Johnson, we remember you. You still here, same phone number, all of that. It was just community. Mm-hmm. And that's what I grew up to see. It was just the way that it was, and there was not another option for it. So.
And you went to an inner city school?
I did not. I went to a private school, to St. Francis. My mother, that was a whole thing that she went in. She was in a school district. She went to Lincoln. It's just like there were so many things that we want to make sure that you don't miss out on or get in just because of how the systems or the school system was changing. So she's like, we want to make sure that you guys are getting different things or getting something that we are not getting here or didn't get here. Mm-hmm. So I went to St. Francis from pre-K to 8th grade. So same school, same group of people, same group of friends. There was a community built from our school too. You
were building relationships easy. From what you were raised on, it was easy for you to go into schools or go wherever you go and build relationship with people.
Yeah.
Good relationship, basically what I'm saying.
And I think especially younger, because it was the same people, but what I realized as I got older is like it's different because it was easier being around the same people. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit more different when it's a bunch of new people and you're trying to figure out things.
Yeah.
So there was a good aspect, and there was also like, I went to 2 schools, pre-K to 8th grade, then I went to high school, and that was it. Mm-hmm. So it was mostly the same people. When I went to high school, of course, it was a little bit more different crowd. But you got comfortable with the same people. You knew them, you knew their family. We were a family, people that I grew up with since I was 4. Same grade people from 8th grade. So it was quite a bit of the same people. It became a family. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Y'all do family reunions?
We do. We're actually having one this summer because it's been a while.
Great.
Yeah. Great. And I'm excited because my kids, they know some of their cousins, but there was a main house. We called it the big house. That was my great-grandparents. Mm-hmm. And I was even blessed to have a 4th generation. I knew my great-grandparents. My great-grandparents, my grandparents, my mother and father, and then me on my mother's side. Like, we had a big house. That's where we went. That's where the family connected. And, of course, once you start to lose some of those family members, it gets kind of split up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because this was the main place. But now it's like your house and my house kind of thing. So I'm like, we're trying to get back to everybody get together so the cousins can know each other and all of this kind of stuff. Something I was watching, Vince Carter and another basketball player, I can't think of who it is. Howard Carter or something. Mm-hmm. I can't remember who it was. They're cousins. They didn't
Tracy McGrady.
Yeah. They're cousins. And they didn't realize until they were adults in the league because families don't get together as much. Their grandmothers are cousins and they were sitting talking.
Great reference.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, that's my grandson plays in the NBA. Mm-hmm. It's like, who's your grandson? It's like, wait a minute, I know him. Call him real quick. And it's like, what's up, cuz? And it's like, you don't realize that you're related to somebody else or your family is friends with so-and-so because the community is just a little bit more spread out.
Yeah. So when you were younger, obviously your parents and stuff, or the older people set up the family reunions and all. With you being older and with that being instilled in you in a young age, family and all that, do you feel any sense of obligation to be the one who steps up so it doesn't like break completely?
I'm doing it now. I'm kind of heading out a lot of the family reunion that's coming up now, which is really funny that you asked. Because I was asked to be on the committee, but it kind of turned into like, well, you take it and I'm like, well, okay. And I don't mind because I love planning stuff, creating stuff. But also I'm being mindful of not to volunteer for stuff that I don't have capacity for. Because I'm like, I'm not getting back to got too much on my plate and stressed out and irritated because I'm doing stuff that I know I don't have time or capacity for. And I'm like, if I have a family, and they're like, well, you have a young family. So most of my cousins have older kids. And I'm like, well, I don't have the capacity that you guys have. My kids are still in school. Your kids are driving and on their own and some of that stuff. So it's just being mindful for me and setting my own boundaries for this is something that I can take on. Because I used to be really bad or good, however you take it. It'd be like, oh, I could do that. I was like, God was like, put your hand down. Put your hand down. No, you cannot. You can, but does it make sense?
Yeah.
So I will sit and I'm like, they're like, well, can anybody do the so-and-so? And it's uncomfortable because it's new. Because I would be like, oh, I could do that. And I'm like, no, I could, but does it make sense? If you do it, that means somebody else didn't get an opportunity to do something. So I'm like, nope, hands off. I'll do what I can. If there's something that you ask me to do that I can do, I'll do it. If you ask me and I can't, I'm like, I can't, but how about, boom, here's what you need to take care of it. Or if you need assistance, if you get, caught up on something, then I can help, but I can't take that on from me. So
you don't
it's
have
hard.
the capacity for it. That's dope.
It's hard, but it's necessary.
It's a difference when you have your own bag of chips and dip, and like people will come in. They won't try to interfere with that too much, but when somebody gives you the dip and the chips, and they say, "Here, you take that," but then they bring their chips and try to dip in, how do you handle that? They've given you, not really given you, you took it on, but they asked you to handle it, basically.
Here's a cup, boom.
Yeah.
Take that. Leave this bowl here. Here's your own. I'll give you what I can give you. And once that's gone, you can find somebody else to take care of it.
What about when they're trying to dip up in the chip, put their chip in the dip that they gave you, though? Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, they gave you the responsibility to do it, but now they're trying to, I don't like the way that is.
Same. Well, this is what I came up with. If you have something that you would like to do, feel free to, bring that in or take it on. I'm happy to let it go. And I say that quickly. Okay. I'm happy to let that go if that's something that you would like to do. Feel free. Like, let me know. Let me know. I'll scratch it off my list. And it's not in a malicious way. It's like, hey.
Got you.
First of all, I'm not I'm not a fighter. Like, I'm not drama. I don't care. I will say real quick, if you want it that bad, you can have it. I'm not about to fight you over it. We're not about to argue. We're not going back and forth more than twice. I said it, you said it, you told me, I'm telling you again, just in case you missed something. And if that's it, okay, I will okay you to death. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. And I'm not. It's like, it's too much.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And I just was talking to my kids this morning because they're in this now. If you are going back and forth and nothing's changing, why are you wasting your energy on this? What she said, what he said, are you going to change what you said? No, because this is what happened. Are you changing what you said? No, because this is what happened. Right. Agree to disagree. You don't even have to agree with me to disagree. But what I'm going to tell you is, okay, you can say it 25 times. I may walk away while you saying it, and you say it to yourself, but I'm done.
Yeah.
And being able to understand, like, boundaries. And it's been hard. One of my words for the year was boss, but it was broken down: boundaries, order, structure, security.
Wait, that's fire. Boundary, order, structure, security.
Yeah.
Break them down.
And it's like boundaries. I need to be able to say what's mine and what's not mine, and to give you the line to say, here's where you stop and where I stop, and this is where it's going to be. Order. Everything needs to be in its place. If it's not, it creates chaos. Everything is all over the place. A junk drawer. You go in and look in a junk drawer and you want to look for something specific. Think about how much longer you're looking for something in a junk drawer than you are in a silverware drawer. Silverware's here. I'm going to go grab a knife real quick. Boom. This drawer has 50,000 things in it that I'm trying to search for to get one thing versus it's right over here. And this is where I'm going to be. You can stay over there doing whatever it is that you like to do in your junk drawer. and I'm gonna be right over here in the little section, those little things you get with the little sections, the knives go here, forks go here, spoons. I'm gonna be right over here. Well, come over here because no, I'm not. I'm right over here. Let me know when you want to be in this place. And it feels so good. Sometimes it will get you though. They'll pull you back over and you're like, wait a minute, how did I come out of it? Boundaries, order, structure. Structure is the same thing. This is how it's going to be. And I learned this as an educator. For kids, a schedule is excellent and it helps you not be the bad guy. This is what's expected of you at 11 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, at 2 o'clock. I'm real good about that. I love having a schedule. I may not always follow it to the T just because today I don't want to do this at 11 o'clock, but I know what's expected of me. So if I decide to say, hey, let's do our 2 o'clock at 10 o'clock and we'll switch that over, that's still structure. You know what's expected, what needs to be done. I love a good check-off list too. Mm-hmm. Checking it off to make sure stuff gets done. Because if you got a bunch of stuff to do, something's going to be forgotten. And then security. This was the biggest one for me. And I think the hardest for both of us, I think Jonathan and I, we were both leaving a company, doing our own business, becoming our own boss. So I'm like, we got to figure out, like, we got bills to pay. The security, we have to make sure that it's different now because we have kids. If it were just us, then we're like, well, we don't need whatever this is, and we'll figure it out. Something in the cabinet, we'll eat a ramen noodle for the night or whatever it is. But you can't do that as much when you have kids. So it's like we got to have a set security for our kids. We cannot come in here, y'all don't know what we're eating for dinner, if there's something to eat for dinner. The lights will never be off. The water will always run. You will get to school, we'll have gas in the car. Will you go to McDonald's twice a week? Probably not. You're going to eat whatever's in the kitchen. But the security of knowing, like, this is the standard for what you can expect no matter what that will be provided for you. And for us, are we going to go to the movies every weekend? Because we used to eat out and do a lot of stuff. No, but we got Netflix. You had to Netflix it or figure out what's on there or find something to do. The security is what's important to me in the future is destined by what I'm doing now. So I got to do something different. I can't just do anything and everything and not set myself up to be secure for what's coming. Because it's coming, unless you don't make it. But then somebody else has to pick it up and keep moving. Like, we got life insurance, even on us and our children. Like, there is no, like, trying to figure it out. Yeah. Think about when you lose a person, like the stress and all that from losing somebody. But now you also got to figure out, how am I going to pay for it? How am I, if something were to happen to one of us tomorrow and we had no insurance, like our bills have to be paid, somebody has to take care of our kids, you're stressing about losing somebody. I don't want to go to work and be bothered with somebody else trying to figure that out. I don't want that to have to be part of our story. So you put things in place so you don't have to worry about that. It's hard. It may look a little crazy to people sometimes, but you know what your end goal is. So you do what you got to do.
Yeah. When you say educator of children for the most part?
Somewhat, and it's kind of switching now. I've been in education, goodness gracious, for over 20 years, and it doesn't seem like it. I started off as a teacher's assistant at 16. And I have been in education in some form or another since I was 16 years old. And it's amazing to me because I've been able to see so many different aspects, from Kansas City Public School to working in Lenexa, Kansas in a child care center, to homeschooling, which I didn't plan on doing initially, to being in a classroom, to creating my own education and curriculum. So I've had a lot of aspects of it. And what I saw at Lenexa, where the budget was basically whatever, to Kansas City, Missouri School District at the time, like there were some things that you didn't get or you could get. So when I got pregnant with June, I was like, you know what? I want to be able to take all the stuff that I've been doing in here in this classroom for somebody else and do it at home with my own kid. So I left. We were on 2 incomes at the time. And I was like, well, I want her to have all that stuff that we had out there. But we're on 1 income, so we're going to have to do something a little bit different. So I'm like, I can create it. If I can see it, I can make it. I'm really good about visual creative. I can look at it, I can replicate it. And that's just been another blessing to be able to say, hey, I can look at this, figure it out. and it gets you in under budget. And just being able to do that. So June was there as I'm creating as a baby. As she grew up a step, I created something different for her. So just educating. I've come from once again, a fourth generation educator. Great grandmother was an educator, Sunday school teacher. She was into fine arts, that kind of stuff. My grandmother was a teacher, almost 30 years. My mother was an educator. And then just seeing that. When my grandmother was teaching, she would bring her books home at the end of the school year, the stuff that they would get rid of. And I would sit dolls down, cousins, whoever, and I would teach them. In the little books, I'd have it up, and it's so funny, that little finger bend where you hold it up, the teachers would always do. And I would do that. I replicated it. We would create games at home, at the table. Around the house, it was a lot of creation. My mother was very resourceful. She was and it's even to this day, looking at stuff like the income that she had then, to be able to see what she did with what she had was crazy. Because I'm looking at stuff now, and I'm like, how in the world did you do what you did on what you had?
It was but the price of living was a little.
It was different though. Yeah. It was different, but we never missed anything, never knew that we didn't have it, except for the extra stuff, kids ask for that we didn't. She's like, girl, I'm like, starter jackets, right? I'm like, oh, I want a starter jacket. She was like, you got a coat. You'll be fine. Or ask your dad. My dad was what you want? I got you. He was that type. So she's like, listen, if I don't have it, he'll take care of it. But it was I see this is cute. And she would replicate it. She made doll clothes. She made any and everything you could think of. She made it. And just seeing her effortlessly do it. There was I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. I'm trying to think if I ever heard her say that. And she may have, I just don't remember. I don't remember there being a space where she was like, I don't know how to do that. She's like, let me look into it.
The fact that you can't remember is, even if she did, the fact that you can't remember, because people tend to remember those things that sting them. And
absolutely.
The fact that she was so heavy on doing that, you might have missed that little one time that she didn't.
That's what I'm saying. And those are the things that were just in us consistently. That was her consistency. Her consistency was reading the Bible. Her consistency was giving of missionary work to other people. I remember as a kid, I think I was 4 or 5 at the time, we had a family staying with us. I think they were homeless, or not necessarily homeless, but in transition. And I remember coming like, who's the people in the living room? And she's like, oh, they're having a hard time. They needed to transition. I don't remember how long it was. It was short, but it was it was a woman, her husband, and then they had a small child. And she's like, they didn't have anything, so we can, so we did. And I'm just seeing that. It was of course. It was no thought of, I don't have it. My mother kept stuff in the car to give to homeless people. She kept gloves, she kept Bibles, she kept money. And we didn't have a lot of money, which I didn't know at the time, because she always made it happen. And I think that was another thing too. She's like, God will provide. God will take care of it. And I'm like, okay. You say it, you're showing me, so I'm believing it, because it's actually happening. We were taken care of. We went to a private school. Yeah. Single mother. Yeah. My dad was there, and I'm sure he took, I don't know, of course, their financial. Yeah. And that's another thing. I don't know what their financial situations were. I don't know what the adults were doing, because that was not my place. And I think they did a great job of making sure that I stayed in the area that I was supposed to stay in. The stuff that they were supposed to worry about, I never knew about. I didn't. I have never seen my parents argue. I've never heard either of my parents say a bad word about each other to this, growing up. And I think, now I'm not saying they didn't do it. Right. I know I hear, and it's so crazy that I hear stories of who they were when they were younger, when they got together. My mother did a really good job, especially after my dad died, of telling me a lot of their relationship and how it unfolded, because I never got a chance to ask certain questions. But she told me a lot of things. She's like, well, this is what happened, and this is why, and this is where we were. There was a whole issue about a salt and pepper shaker one time that my grandmother likes to tell the story. They were fussing at each other over something. She's like, well, she won't give me my stuff back. It's like, well, what was it? It's a salt and pepper shaker. She's like, if you don't give him But that was the petty, that was a petty argument.
Yeah.
But it's like, I never saw that.
Yeah.
By the time I came around, my mother was like, I have an older sister. She's like, I saw what happened when we were in the place of that where she was there and she saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'll never do this again.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never be at a place where my kids are suffering and hurting because of something that I'm doing with another adult.
Mm-hmm.
That has nothing to do with you. So she's like, here's what I'm doing. And we are coming to an agreement. We won't this can't happen. It won't. And I've never seen it. And I'm like, the self-control that it had to take. Because as a married person, sometimes that it's just, you butt heads sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And just being able to, she's more important, we're not doing that.
Say that again?
She's more important. Like your kids, you're more important. We're not doing that.
Okay.
No matter what it was. Right before my father passed, I was on the phone with him probably a couple months, and I was talking to him. My mother was in the background saying something. He's like, she okay? What happened? It's like, oh, she just got a new desk or something, and she was trying to put together, and she's having trouble with it. He's like, tell her to bring it over here. He sat out there with the porch light on because it got dark, and he was putting the furniture together. And I was like, this is interesting, but it made a mark on me. It's like, this is what is to be expected of a relationship, whether y'all got together, y'all figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I always heard there was still love between them. Like, we just two strong-willed people. We just, you want what you want, I want what I want. We can't find a way to figure it out. So I love you, but we just gonna love each other from a distance. And I respect that. And it's hard, but it's understood. I understand it so much better even as an adult now. It's like, it was important enough for them to say, whatever was going on between us, that's between us.
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing, my husband and your father are not the same person.
Got it.
Like, what I'm dealing with my husband is not your business as your father. That's different. Like, that's not the same. Let your dad be your dad. It is. It's hard and it's hard.
Both ways. Yeah, both ways.
It's hard and it's hard because I've had to catch myself. I'm like, no, I can't, because I want your dad to be your dad. What's happening between me and my husband has nothing to do with what's happening between you and your dad, and that's just how that has to be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's so amazing to see and hear it, but to also experience it and to also be a parent and then understand how difficult that had to be for certain things.
Because you don't want to have your children disliking him because the way he treated you when they treat him.
Absolutely.
And when he treats them great.
Yeah.
But they got the residue of how he treats you, because ultimately mom comes first a lot of the times anyway. But I want to get back to that, but go here first before I get off the education thing. Not having a child before you became an educator, because you was an educator at 16, right? You started as a teacher's assistant. And then going, so you already have the experience of being a teacher. Then you have a child. You have to educate this child too, but you still have to be the child's mother, parent. Yeah. It's like having a coach, being the coach of the football team, and your son is on the football team, but still having to go home and be a father too. A lot of us don't know how to separate that. You know what I'm saying? So how do you separate the two? And then having a child and going to educate, being a mother, then going to educate the kids that aren't necessarily your kids by blood. Because, obviously you have some type of connection to them and they become your kids. How do you learn how to communicate between, if I'm making sense when I ask this?
It's hard. And I will say that's probably one of the biggest reasons that I stopped homeschooling. Because June was like, can you just tell me the answer? It's like, Mommy, just stop teaching me for a second and tell me. And I'm like, well, I can do one or I can do both or the other. But when you go to school, the teacher's not going to sit and tell you the answer.
Mm-hmm.
So transitioning into that was difficult. I was excited coming from a classroom to come home and do this specifically with my child, because I got to cater it specifically to her. Anything that she was doing, I would literally stop in the moment, go and create something. And she got to see firsthand me creating. June was sewing at 1.5. She was at the sewing machine with me. She sewed a pillow.
And lifting weights.
That too. But she sold a pillow. She was there. I'm like, she's like, well, I want to play. It's like, I'm that. I want to do it. Like,
She said that at one?
man, you know, it's so crazy. I look back on how much I did with June. It was surprising. She was potty trained at probably like 16 months, probably before then. She was signing that she had to potty at 13 months. And she knew colors, letters, shapes, numbers, all of that before she was 2. Like sleeping, it was so much. I was so indoctrined to education and schedules and this and that I did routinely with her.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say one thing: it took me off a little bit because I was so much into the work that I was so stuck to a schedule that I was teacher first, not mom first.
There you go. And
I had to step back and like, this was the point of you staying home so that you could do this how you wanted to do it, not how you were doing it at work.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to adjust because it was hard. I was breastfeeding, so like every couple hours I would have to stop. And before that, I would sit and get caught in something for 3-4 hours. Not being touched, talked to, not eating, not doing something because I got into the flow of something and I could stick with it. There's been plenty of times that I started, Jonathan went to bed and he would wake up in the morning, getting up in the morning, the sun's coming up and I hadn't moved from taking care of something, like finishing a project. He was like, are you still at the table? He's like, I went to, like, that was 8 hours ago. I'm like, yeah, but it got good to me and I was in and I was making creative.
Yep.
I'm like, yeah. As a mother, new mom, breastfeeding, it was hard to do that because I would get into something in 45 minutes. She would need something. I was like, okay, I'll be right back. And I was like, girl, you gonna sit down for breastfeed for 30, 45 minutes. You ain't coming back to this. And I remember a cousin telling me, she's like, I'm gonna just hop right back into what I was doing. She's like, no, you're not. And I was like, you don't know me. Yes, I will. It's like, that's what I've always done. Mm-hmm. And she was like, okay. Right. She's like, okay. And it was a hard transition for me. But I remember it's like the ultimate goal. What is it that you want out of this? When I create, when I do events, my thing is, what do I want people to get from this? What do I want people to experience as they're doing it? And like, it was like, you got to get back to what it is that you're doing it for. And I remember even a parent group that I was in, I did a workshop for them. Share what you love with your children. Because I'm like, this sucks. Like, I thought I was going to come home. This is going to be fun. And we're going to be at the play groups. And I'm like, I don't like this. Like, this wasn't what I thought it would be. Uh-huh. And I don't know if it was the Lord that said something to me or it was just kind of like one of those, you're structuring your life around a new person. Like, you just met her. Your life was good before she came. Stop trying to structure your life around something. She don't know what life is like. Right. Like, you're trying to structure your life around somebody that has no idea what's going on. Bring her into the stuff that you were already doing that you loved. What were you doing that was good, that made you feel good, that made you want to hop up in the morning or not sleep that night because you was at the table for hours? And so I started doing that. I'm like, she became my little muse. And I was like, this makes more sense now. Yeah. That's what I had her sewing. And I put out a lot of the blockers because I found a book about elimination communication when June was probably like 7 months. 6 or 7 months. It's like you can potty train your kid like your baby. And I was like, what? It's like, girl, stop. You doing too much. Stop. Put that. Like, I'm like, no, I'm interested. I want to see. You tell me no, and that intrigues me. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't. And I was like, double dog there. Mm. And it's like, cool.
I get it.
And so I went and got a potty, and Jonathan was like, why? No, somebody got it for my baby shower. No, it was the other way around. It was a potty seat for the toilet. And I'm like, well, she can't get up on the toilet. She's 7 months. She can't even walk. Yeah. And so I went and got a little plastic potty seat from Target. And he was like, what are you doing? He's like, she's 7 months. I was like, just watch. And I remember the first, he's like, she really used the toilet. I was like, you thought I was playing? Like, we doing this. So it was just those moments of challenging myself as a parent, as an educator. I love that I got to do that before I had my own kids, though. Mm-hmm. We took classes. There were so many workshops and seminars. I was excited because I love to learn. I'm taking classes now just because I want to learn stuff. And it's just that new information, because of the type of creative that I am, you could set something out on the table and I could turn it into a lesson. And that's just how the ability that the Lord has given me to be like, I can see stuff differently. And I'm like, okay, I can see it. I got this. This is what I can make from it. And the Lord gave me an opportunity. Somebody's like, oh, you should do a daycare. I'm like, well, if I do a daycare, that means I don't get to focus this attention on my own child. Like, she's still fresh. She's still new. And I'm still learning her and what other things are out there, what things are available. And if I do that, that takes attention away from me being able to really hone in on this. And so I created a lot of stuff, some stuff that I planted a seed for when June was little, and I'm just now getting back into because of just how the life has gone. But it's been amazing to be able to have the opportunity to do that kind of stuff. And now I see where we would create games at the table at home. My kids are doing that now because they've seen me do it so much. I will make something, pick up something. Onyx has created a game. June's created a game. And it's like, it feels good to see that even though sometimes you don't think your kids are picking stuff up or watching you, that they show you in the process that like, you didn't just do this just to wear yourself out or to be busy. Like, it's actually doing something and it feels good. Because I'll hear my kids and I'm like, I'll tell them stuff. It's like, I told you like 20 times. But then I'll hear say, well, listen, because this is what happens when they tell their cousins or telling each other. But see, when you do this, this is how you're supposed to do it. And I'm like, you actually listen. And it feels good because, like I say, it's planting seeds. When you go out and plant a garden, it doesn't grow the next day. So I try to look at it that way. It's like I'll put the seed out there and know that at some point you water it, cultivate it, it'll start to show something. So that's how I try to take parenting in life. Yeah.
Same way God parenting you.
Absolutely.
I'd be remiss not to ask you what that checklist looked like that you had to look at. Like, nah, my pops didn't say that. Like, what are some of those things?
That's a good question. Both of my parents were really good about this. They said they always wanted to be the first of the things that I had because they didn't want somebody else coming in trying to impress me with these things. The first diamonds, the first gold, first experiences for things. It's like, I don't want you to go out and you need to fulfill having an experience with somebody else or with something else because you didn't get a chance to do it here. There were questions. Like, there was really nothing off the limit that we couldn't ask or say respectfully. There was always that. And my mother was really good. And my father too. He would, like I said, my father was my confidence. He was if you want it, you got it. It was very difficult on the other end of that. My sister is older. She has sickle cell. And it's a blood disease. So she was in and out of the hospital consistently. Our life was the hospital. They knew us by name. If I said Harvey, which is my maiden name, I was like, oh, you Nicole's sister. That was how well they knew us because we were there. And so the focus was not on me specifically as much in my mother's house sometimes. It could be 2:00 in the morning, my sister's sick, we gotta go. We're going to the emergency room. I don't want to go. I'm sick, I'm tired. And most of the time, I was just the go with the flow child because I didn't have a choice. I would go and I would ask for something and I couldn't get it here. My dad was like, what you want? And I remember asking him, why do you do stuff for me? Like, without hesitation. He's like, what do you mean? Why do I do stuff for you? You're my daughter. I love you. That's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. And it was that this is the standard of what it is. You ask for it, you get it. Now, also understand that if you are asking for it, you should be able to make sure it's okay for you to do it for yourself. And that was the other end of it. It was like, I'm going to spoil you, but I'm also teach you how to make sure you do this for yourself. Because there is now you got to have somebody else come and take this place to spoil you. So I didn't have a problem spending money on myself or buying stuff because my dad said, yeah, I'll do it for you, but I'm going to also show you how to make sure that you're taken care of. When my dad was dying, he knew he was dying. He went and set up our Social Security so that he was like, I can't be here to finish taking care of you financially. I can't be here personally, but I'm going to make sure that as long as I can make sure that it's done, it's done. And of course, at that point, he didn't have insurance, but you can't. Once you have something, they won't insure you. That's just, they like, well, we know you're dying, so we're not going to give you insurance.
Yeah.
But it's like, what I can do is make sure that the Social Security is set up. So monthly, whatever it is that I could have been there to do, I'm going to make sure it's taken care of. He died in November, like a week and a half before Thanksgiving. By December, we had a check because he set it up. He made sure that I know I'm not going to be here. So I'm going to make sure as long as I can that I'm going to be here to take care of you in that manner. So it was that. It was the confidence telling me that you're awesome. You're beautiful. You are perfect just the way you are. Both of my parents, like, listen, you don't have to change a single thing about you. Right now, you are perfect the way you are. Don't let somebody else tell you that you have to be somebody else or do something else, because God says you are who you are. And I'm listening to God. God says it, then that's what we're going to go for. You are who you are, and you don't have to be somebody else to fit into something, to stand in. You don't have to jump in the crowd. We got the whole, if somebody jumps off of a bridge, are you going to do it too? Be okay to stand by yourself. Yeah. And I got supported so much at home that I was okay to go out and stand by myself. It's like, I'm your safety net. We want you to go out and explore, especially while we're here. Because if something happens, you can always come back. There was no, get out of here, you can't do this, you can do it. My mother, believe you can until somebody tells you can't, and then find another way. There was no, they said you can't, so we just don't do it. Just assume you can.
Yeah.
Don't go in there asking, hey, can I? Is it available? You can do it. If somebody says, oh, you don't go through this door, well, where's the door that I go through? Like, well, ma'am, I don't know. She was real good about that. So, well, can you give me to somebody who can help me? If you aren't able to, who can help me? If not, okay, I'll come back. And then when I come back, I'll tell you. So that way the next person asking will know.
Damn.
Yeah, and it's so crazy to see it now, to be the parent and to know that how tough it is to give that. Because it's harder for me as a parent now. Mm-hmm. The early years, I had that down. I had education for that. I had training. My parents were there to walk me through that. Not personally, but I used to babysit. My mom would be there when I nannied and babysit. She would show me what to do with kids. Mm-hmm. And it's like some of that stuff, I had it hands behind my back. I could do it just from being an educator and working in that space. But as my kids have gotten older, I'm like, this for me is the hardest time of parenting. Because I don't have parents. I don't have somebody that I could say, hey, mommy, when I was this age, what did I do? Or what did you do? And so it's difficult now for me because I'm trying to figure it out on my own. And I would say this has been probably the most challenging part for being a parent. 0 to 5, I got it. Hands down, like my cousins have a joke. It's like, we're going to send our kids to you from 0 to 5. Once they get there, it's like, we can handle them. That first year, we don't know nothing about it. And I'm like, well, I got the reverse. From 0 to 5, hands down. I can write a book on it, and I should write a book. But like, once it gets to a certain point, I don't have anybody to lean on. I mean, I have people, but it's not the same. I don't have my dad to say, hey, how did you handle this? I don't even have my dad to answer questions about certain stuff, or my mother. And it's difficult to be somebody's person, but to not have a person, if that makes sense.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a lot.
Yeah. I gotta get at you, though. Gotta get at you. Why you do my mans like that?
First of all, I know what you're talking about. And Jonathan loves to tell the part of the story, but he leaves out a part of it.
Talk to me.
When we were talking when I went out to college, that's when we kind of connected for real. We went to high school together our junior year. We never had any classes together. And I just remember seeing him in the hallway, but we never had conversations just because of how the schedules were set up.
What'd you think of him when you were seeing him in the hallway?
He was cool, but I never talked to him, so I didn't really get to know his personality, which I think for some, it may have been a good thing that we didn't interact in, because we may have had different views of each other, and when we didn't get a chance to actually have that communication. Mm-hmm. So we were in college. Well, I was in college, and he was coming down to visit. Somebody that he went to school with was at the same college that I was at. And we were in the same dorm. He came down, and some people that went to school with him also lived across the hall with me. And so they were coming down. She's like, oh, I think you might know Beatrice. Like, I think y'all went to high school together. Crazy story about that, actually. The girl that he was coming down to visit, one of his really good friends, I met her before I went to college. Her mother and my mother had a mutual friend. We were both going to the same school. She was like, I know another girl, her mom, they were best friends like me and my mom, real cool. And she's like, she's having a hard time with her daughter leaving. I know you're having a hard time with B leaving. I'm going to link you guys so that the mothers can have a conversation and talk with each other. And you have somebody here in Kansas City and down in school. And then the girls can link. So we talked, and I had never met her before this day. We linked, ended up being in the same hall.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the person that he was coming down to visit, one of his friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, okay. They knocked on the door. And I remember looking at the people like, who is coming here? And I was like, Jonathan. And we say to this day, which I think is weird, I was like so surprised and excited to see him. I'm like, we had never had a word with each other. But I think the environment of being away from home and like seeing a face that was familiar. I was like, Jonathan. And my best friend was in the room with me and was like, come on in. They came in and chatted. And then the girl was like, she's like, I'm getting ready to leave. And he's like, I'm going to stay. And she was like, what? And he's like, no, I'm going to stay. We're going to hang out. We're just going to talk. So the three of us stayed and we talked, but it felt just so natural. And that's what I say, like, okay, well, you fine, you know, you can say. And he was like, well, who's this? Is this your roommate? I'm like, no, she's just visiting here. He's like, well, who sleeps over here? It's like, where's your roommate? I was like, I don't have a roommate. She just moved out probably a week ago. He was like, oh, he kicked off his shoes, got in the bed. He was like, oh, I'm good. I'm right here. And my friend and I are looking at each other, and I'm like, whatever, go for it. And so we sat and talked, and then she left, and I'm like, well, what are you doing? He's like, I'm a stay. And I remember and then that's what I said. It's so crazy because I was like, okay, the conversation was so cool. It was so comfortable. It felt natural. And I'm like, cool, you can say. We sat and talked. And I remember we had this joke, which is so funny. When he got up the next morning, I guess, I don't know what his intentions were, but my intentions were, we're cool. You can stay over there, which I don't recommend. I would say that I don't recommend for people to do that. That's a very tricky situation that could get you in a lot of trouble. But he got up the next morning. I'm like, it's been real. He was like, what does that mean? I'm like, it's been real. Like, see you later. He was like, oh, okay. Like, that was it. We talked, we chilled. He's like, well, we exchange numbers? And we exchanged numbers and we text. Then when I got home for Christmas break, we were going to go out. I'm like, okay, we'll go to the movies. And this is the part that Jonathan always leaves out that I feel like changed a lot of stuff. He picked me up. And he met my mother. My mother was always they don't come here, ain't no honking, none of that. Comes to the door, meet, we talk. I was not in the room when they introduced each other, but I know there was a social security card produced, like a driver's license produced. I'm telling you, my mother did not play. She didn't play about her kids. And she told me, she's like, anybody that you date gets off easy because your dad's not here. So she's like, so I'm gonna do extra. Just know that. She's like, so you can prepare them or whatever, but just know ain't nobody coming in here like that because I want them to know that this is not going to be the one you play with. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, cool. We got in the car. He's like, your mama asked me for my social security card. I was like, did you have it? He's like, yeah, I gave it to her. I was like, well, let's go. We get in the car, and we were staying in Nob Hill at the time, so Bannister. And we get in the car and we start driving. And I'm like, we've been driving for a minute. And we keep driving. And I'm like, where are we going? He's like, we're going to the movies. He picks me up from Nob Hill and drives me to the movies in Berrywood. I was like, oh, okay. I know what type of mess you on. I'm like, why would you not take me to something closer? It's like, you playing games. When we hung out at school, because he had come down there a couple of times and we would hang out, I wasn't with anybody. And from my impression, he wasn't either. So I'm like, it was never a conversation of that. It was when you hear, you hear. When you're not, you're not. Because we're not together. We're just hanging out. And so I was like, you on some bull. And so I remember just the vibe changing. I was like, you done picked me up from Bannister and drove 30 minutes to Berry Road. Like, if this is what you were doing, you could have kept that. And it just changed it for me. And I'm like, this was not the same vibe you were on when you were visiting. Like, what's happening? And so I remember I don't remember why we stopped talking, but I just remember there just being it felt different. And I did not change my number because of him. I will put that on the record.
Before you go there, real quick though, what do you mean the vibe changed on the way there? Like, because if you tell me y'all driving the Berry Road, I'm thinking he trying to show you a better, take you on a better.
No, nobody was at Berry Road. That was what I took from it.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, so you're trying to be slick.
Okay.
In Maryville, where I went to school, nobody was there. It was a pretty small town. I went to Northwest.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a small group of people. We would hang out. He would come down. He had come down and visited like 2 or 3 times, and we would just hang out around campus. But I'm like, something's different. Something's off. And I'm like, okay, so and I had a lot of uncles as well growing up. Mm-hmm. So it's like you catch things, you watch things, you pay attention. And I'm like, why in the world? There was Town Center, there was Ward Parkway. I'm sure we passed a couple things that you could have stopped at, but you were intentional about taking me to Berry Road. So I'm like, okay. And when I got home, I had a prepaid phone when I went to school. She's like, you don't really need a cell phone. You got a school phone. I'm going to just get you something else just so you'll have it. But I ended up she's like, you costing more than you need to. Let's get you a regular cell phone. So that's why I switched over. She's like, because I would have to buy a card, send you a card for minutes on it. She's like, that's too much. Mm-hmm. So that was why I switched. But I remember it wasn't we're cool and we're just hanging out. Like, it was this seems a little, something seems off. And it felt different for me. I'm like, we were not playing games. We weren't trying to be serious and dating. We were just hanging out. So if there was something else to it, then why did you ask me in the first place? And I was like if that's what you're on, then do that over there. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that was it. And there was not I'm never calling him again, that kind of thing. But when I switched over, we were at the movies. I was with my mother and a cousin at the time. And it did bud dial. That happened.
The pocket dial.
Yes, and I remember thinking and I tried to turn it off, but he called right back. He's like, "What you doing? I'm at the movies. I'm gonna call you back." And we got out the movies. I was like, "This dude really? He came up to the movies." But I'm like, I wasn't mad at him. I'm like, if that's the energy that you want, that's what you need to be doing. Like the other stuff, I'm not interested in playing the game. Yeah. Like you're gonna be here, be here. Mm-hmm. Like if that's what you pursuing that hard, then actually be behind it. And so we talked more after that. And I'm like, I'm going back to school in a week. He's like, well, can I lock your number in? I was like, well, you got it now, lock me in. But I'm like, I'm telling you, I am not into playing games. Yeah. I'm not doing that. So you figure out where you are and what you're trying to do, and then let me know. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no.
Yeah. And I ain't gonna hold you too much longer. What that potty look like setting it up for Jonathan, though?
Say that again.
The potty, going back to having it's like a challenge. Somebody told you can't do it, and you set the potty up for potty training early for your kid. Same thing going into this relationship, because y'all 2 different forces coming together. So how do you set that potty up for y'all relationship to work or whatever? For me,
I am really big on being able to accept people as they are. You don't have to be anything else around me than who you are. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things that I think he really liked and respected about me. He was like, I don't have to be anybody else but who I am. And I was like, I don't want you to be something. Don't be who you think I want you to be. Be who you are. I'm really big on show me for what's the real thing and let me decide if I want to be involved with it versus you putting on an air of who you think you need to be, because the real you is going to come out eventually. I'm like, so be who you are. So that way that I get to decide or not if I want to be in your company. And I'm going to give you the same respect. Who I am is who I am. And that's been who I am consistently. I don't play that. We're going to be fake friends and good. Mm-hmm. If I don't like you, which I don't have very many people that I just don't care for. Like if we don't vibe, we don't vibe. I'm not going to. Jonathan's like, you're not going to be? No. She's cool. He's cool. But for whatever reason, we don't work. We don't mesh. So there's no need to play about this. Mm-hmm. Time, value, energy, that kind of stuff is very important. And something, and I'm trying to think of who told me this. Like, everybody is not allowed access to you. And I'm really instilling this into my kids now, because you don't have to be somebody else to have a friend. Your real friends will be your friends no matter what, because they know who you are, they respect you. But you also have to be comfortable enough in yourself to be who you are. And that takes a lot. I have a friend, we were just talking about this. We've been friends for 25, how old am I? 25, 24 years. And to think that we've had our ups and downs in friendships and some transitions in life. But like, I know you. If somebody were to say, like, do you know, I know her. She knows me. And there's some stuff we laugh like, girl, you will never, ever say this again. Ever repeat it. This conversation never happened. But those are the people that I can trust and say, hey, I know you. You know me. I don't have to put on an air. I don't have to be somebody else. I am not people. And I get that you said when I came here before, it's like reserved personality. I am, because I don't think that there is levels to what people should be able to access from you. Everybody is not going to get the same you. When you go to concerts, unless everybody doesn't get the same seat, it depends on how much you pay, the level of access that you'll have. Like, the person that I just met is not going to get the same level of me that I give to my friend that I've known for over 20 years. You don't get to know me that well. There are certain parts of me that, not that I'm hiding, I'm trying to be private, or that's not for you. You haven't earned that. And I think that too many people give too much of themselves where people don't deserve it. And it's not that like you're not good enough to know me. Yeah. It's that that's not something that makes sense for me to share with you right now. Or maybe not yet, or maybe we'll get there, but that's not something that does that. And for me, it felt that way for me with Jonathan. I didn't feel like I needed to be anybody else. It was from the moment that he walked and I looked at the peephole and I was like, Jonathan. And we laugh about that to this day. I don't know why I felt so comfortable with him. We had never had a conversation. Not one single conversation up until that point. But I also know that when God says that people are supposed to be in your life, they are. They always laugh and say, well, your man's not just going to come and knock on your door. If God sends him, he will. He literally came and knocked on my dorm room door. But if I had not been where I was supposed to be, that wouldn't have happened. So you also have to be mindful of like being comfortable in your space, being who you are. Because I could have been a different person. I could have put on an air and done something, but it's not a good foundation. And I think being able to be 100% who you are, which goes back to my parents and that foundation. The foundation sets up everything. And it makes a difference. So I'm thankful. I got the best of both worlds, and not even just both worlds, but so many opportunities to see different things that I got to pick and choose what I wanted to show, how I wanted to show up, how I wanted to be known and have my life to be built. Yeah. And there are so many people that you get to pick and choose. But ultimately, you have to be known to know that what you choose is going to be what you get. And it's okay to change. It's okay to switch. I'm teaching my kids that now. Once they pick something, they're like, no, well, you said that, so you got to stick with it. It's okay to change your mind. Okay. Everybody's not going to understand why you change your mind. And sometimes you get to explain it. Sometimes you don't. I have a friend, and this goes back to when my mother died. The friend that I'm 20 plus years, almost 20 something years, she came and sat with me every single day after my mother died when I had taken off of work. She never asked if she could come. She never checked to see if I was there. She would come every single day and just sit with me. She never asked anything. Sometimes we didn't even have a real conversation, but it was just to say, hey, I know you need me. I want to be here. And it wasn't until probably some years later that I had talked to another friend, and she was like, we always watched, because we knew that the relationship that you and your mother had, we knew you were going to fall apart. I was like, what do you mean? She was like, we just, in our heart, was like, you guys were too close for you to lose her like that after also having lost your father without crumbling. And I remember asking her about that. She was like, she's like, of course I wouldn't come and tell you that. She's like, it didn't make sense. But she's like, now that we're talking about it, there wasn't if it was going to happen, it was a when. And she's like, I just never wanted you to be there by yourself when it happened. she's like, but what I've learned, and I've had 2 friends tell me that, is your relationship with God helped me to see a completely different level of God watching you go through that. And so you don't realize sometimes that the things that you're going through is not even for you. It's for other people. That was the hardest time of my life. Within a week and a half span, my mother had an aneurysm Good Friday. She had another aneurysm while they were taking her to surgery Saturday. And on Easter Sunday, she was pronounced brain dead. They were doing the test, and I was like, there's no vitals or nothing coming through. And I remember going in a few days afterwards, because I cried, of course, right as it happened. But then it was something in me. The Lord was like, you don't need to do that. Like, you have done, and I kept thinking in my mind, I was like, I wish I could have. I wish I would have, but I could never finish the sentence. I was like, I showed my mother while she was here that I loved her. Mm-hmm. There was not a moment that went by that my mother could even question that I loved her, that I was there for her, and vice versa. God is like, you can't even finish the sentences. And I tried to. I remember crying like, oh my God, she's gone. I wish I would have. We could have. I was like, wait a minute. I can't finish any of those sentences. And God was like, because you did what you were supposed to do. And I sat there and I was like, dang, he's like, now it's time for you to take everything that your parents have taught you and to like stand on it. Yeah. It's your time. The shade is out. You don't have anything to, like a crutch, the parents to lean on. Like, it's your time to stand out and do this.
Sink or swim.
Yeah. And I remember going, and even thinking about it is crazy to me, because I see now where my friends are like, we thought you were going to crumble. I remember going out and talking to the apartment, the manager at the apartment, and going into her. I don't know what I was expecting from her when I went in, but I definitely did not expect what she gave me. I went in, I'm like, well, my mother just passed. I wanted to let you know what was going on. And she turned from me. She's like, what's your address? Gave her my address. She put it in the computer. And she's like, well, your rent's paid up. Just be out by the end of the month. And then turned and like looked dead at me. And that was it. It's like, not a I'm sorry to hear that. Not a nothing. Just, yeah, you paid up for the rest of the month. You good. Just be out by the 1st. I was like, dang, like, is this is the other side of this? Yeah. Like, this is what you get from, like, this is it? And the crazy thing, her name was Hope. And I was like, you got the wrong name, first of all, because this is not what I needed in that moment. Mm-hmm. And I remember going, and then a couple of days later, I went to drive off to move some stuff, and my car stopped. It started smoking. And so I got back to the parking lot. I'm like, and I'm not a person, I don't even really cuss a lot. And I was like, you gotta be effing kidding me. Like, seriously. It hasn't even been a week. My mother died. Went over here to tell her, and I'm pretty much homeless because, like, this is where we stayed. She's like, just get your stuff out. And it was the 16th that she passed. So I'm like, I have less than 2 weeks to move our stuff out of a 3-bedroom apartment to figure it out. And I remember as I was coming back in from trying to leave to go somewhere as my car is smoking, and I sit there, and this was one of the times that I heard God's voice very distinctly, like hearing him. God was like, trust me. The scripture that my mother used to always say, trust me, try me, prove me, says the Lord. And it was in that moment, God was like, this is where you can trust me. Try me. Prove me that what I say is what I say. You literally have nothing at this moment. Your mother's gone. Your parents are gone. You have no car. You have nowhere to live. Like, you are at a place that you can crumble, or you can stand on everything that's been built for you this far. And it was like, okay, well, Lord, I'm a stand on it. And that's how I've moved ever since, with faith. And it's just like, the Lord's going to take care of it. She's been telling you all this time. He will take care of it. He will provide for you. So do it. Mm-hmm. And that's just how I've been moving.
When you say change, because I've been on that too. Like, I used to be like, nah, you can't change. You whatever you said then is what you said. Oh, then I started realizing, like, you can like LeBron James as the best player now, mm-hmm. and then say, that's okay. Yeah. You can change your mind. I'm not a prisoner of this thought forever. You don't allow yourself to grow and then nobody can talk to you about anything and get you're always just what you think. Then that creates arguments all the time because it's not how you said it was.
Yeah.
So when you say that, that's really powerful. John made sure that he gave you praise for like what you put on him, how you changed him. What has he put on you? And then we'll close out.
I think one of the biggest things is kind of like you said, Jonathan is he's a very social person, which I love because where he would go out and come out of a room and know everybody, I'm not the same. I'm going to come in, take care of my business, and I'm going to get out. But he is, when he goes into somewhere, if he comes out, everybody's going to know who he is just because of the personality. Yeah, and I'm growing into that, or at least when I need to be able to just adapt to people in situations. Because sometimes once you've gone through a lot of stuff, you do come, for me, sometimes I've noticed, reserve a little bit. Because like I've been through a lot. Some people don't understand it. When you feel a certain way, when you need to adjust or stuff doesn't feel differently, I can't explain it to everybody I meet why I feel the way I do. So instead of me having to feel like I need to explain it, sometimes I'm going to just pull back. So being able to adapt to those situations, even with the workshop that I did with the families, it's like, go back over there and talk to the families, interact with these people. And it's just that extra push to be able to see those things in the spaces and the gaps that I miss.
Yeah.
And I love, just like fingers, when those fingers fit, there's places that God puts people in your life to fill those gaps for you. He's really good about showing it, because there's a lot of stuff that I do that I don't necessarily show. And he's like, but you could be helping somebody else with this stuff that you do or say, but you're not putting it out there. So just being mindful to share more, to do that. And then to also give grace for people, because a lot of where you come from makes you who you are. And we had such different viewpoints growing up that sometimes it's hard for me to understand or to see what somebody else is coming from. But just being able to say, hey, you know what? Let me stop for a second and give them grace and listen to them and understand what's happening. And then once I know, to be able to adapt and adjust my viewpoint. Because I tell people a lot of time, if you were to sit into a seat and put your hands over your eyes, you can only see through these viewpointers. There's so many other things that are going on around you that you have no idea about, no experience, because, well, this is how I see it, and this is how I grew up, and this is what I know, and nothing else outside of here is right. But that's only what you see. Like, you and me are sitting in two different seats. You get a whole completely different view of what I'm seeing now. But if you are so stubborn and stuck on, I'm not, because this is it. And also being able to have that conversation with him, like, that's how you understand things. That's how you grew up. But here, listen and see where I am. So let's find a place not even have to change how you see it, but to be able to just be open to a different perspective.
Yeah.
And I think it's awesome. Like, our kids get a very good, I would say, a balance of stuff. Was where, like, I'm not doing that. Your dad will do it. Where he's like, nah, ask your mom. Versus like, oh, we'll do that together. Or just being able to have that. It makes a difference, because you don't get that one view. Your mom is this way, your dad's this way. You only get that. Versus bring it together. We're going to do it this way. And that way you get to flow in and out of
pockets.
What it is. And I think just the respect that we have for who you are as a person. Like, I respect you as a person. Whatever you feel, I don't have to agree with you, but I respect it because that's how you feel. Yeah. If it's important to you, then it needs to at least hold some weight for me, because I respect you enough to hold some weight for you. And our kids get that. It's not my choice to tell you what you like or what you get to do or don't get to do to some extent. But even with food, I'll tell my kids, like, hey, we're going to try it together. Well, I don't like this. You don't know till you try it.
Yeah.
You don't know. And then guess what? Even if you try it, I'm not trying to make this your favorite food.
Right.
So if you try it and you don't like it, that's okay. I tell my daughter this story, and she's probably tired of hearing it at this point. But
she's about to start repeating it.
Yes, she is. She could tell it word for word. When I had her, I left the child care center that I was at, and I was home, and one of my friends from work was coming to visit. And we would always do like a big lunch for somebody's birthday. And it was taco salad for another coworker. She's like, I know you love taco salad. I'm going to come and see the baby, and I'm going to bring you some dessert. She's like, I got some carrot cake for you. And I was like, I don't eat carrot cake. I didn't say it to her, but in my mind, I'm like, girl, I don't eat carrot cake. As a kid, I'm like, why do I want vegetable cake? Carrot cake does not sound appealing to me as a kid. Like, I don't want a cake full of vegetables. And she brought it. And she came and saw the baby, and I ate. As I was eating after she left, and I'm like, let me try this carrot cake. Oh my goodness!
Throw it up.
to this day, it's my favorite. And I'm like, think about that. At 28 years old, I had my first experience with carrot cake. Think about how many things. If I would have been like, girl, I don't really eat carrot cake, she never would have brought it. I never would have had the experience of it, and it wouldn't be my favorite to this day. Like over 10 years. But being able to be open to, I'll try it, or I'll see. And being able to be comfortable enough in yourself to also know, to discern from those moments, like, that's not for me. That's for me, that's not for me, and being able to try something different. So I think the biggest thing with that is to make sure that the space is safe so that you can do both.
Yeah.
Try it out, but have enough experience with different things where you can say, this one's not for me, but thank you. So
you and John's analogies are unmatched. But y'all are like the true definition of, you know how like people get broken crayons and just do away with them.
Oh, absolutely.
Y'all are the true definition of broken crayons, still color though.
Yeah.
Both of y'all together, and
Thank you.
am so marked by you talking about you are an educator of people.
Thank
you. You left me so marked, and I appreciate you.
No, thanks for having me.
The goal is to leave a lasting imprint on your minds and their heart. We probably been indelibly marked. I didn't even have to ask you to leave. Because I usually ask people, can you leave us with something?
Go ahead.
My name is June and I live on the moon.
Her name is June and she live on the moon. Every time she eats cereal, get the girl a spoon. I see her at lunch around noon. We get in the car, we go zoom.
Hey.
I got the speakers, they go boom. Let's watch some TV, some cartoons.
Hey.
Keep on rapping. My daughter in the background, Onyx is snapping. Table tapping, having some fun. Give me some popcorn because I'm on the run. All right.
Hey, awesome. Okay, so there you have it. There is your daddy-daughter rap challenge.